Good evening. My name is Susan Stewart Rassicott, and I am the chair of the Social and Climate Action Committee here at First Parish Stoughton. Here at First Parish, we have guiding principles that direct our activities, and one of our principles pertains to justice and an adherence to the democratic process, which leads us to why we are sponsoring this evening's event. It is our attempt to provide a transparent forum for the community of Stoughton to come together and discuss this issue. Our guests this evening are John Anzavino and Jess Miner, both of whom were appointed to the Elementary School Independent Building Working Group. Did I get that right?
Nope.
Elementary School Building Independent Working Group.
There you go.
ESBIWG for short.
Yeah. They were the chair and co-chair of the advisory group, and they have graciously agreed to sit for another round of questions from the community. I'll begin with a list of questions that I have prepared and then open it up to the audience. There is a basket in the back if you would like to put your question, submit your question there. And bathrooms are in the hallway, coffee and tea is here, and feel free to help yourself to any of those.
Cookies.
Cookies, Girl Scout cookies. Let's get started. Who established the Elementary School Building Independent Working Group, and what was its purpose?
The town manager, Tom Colter, is the one that put this group together. And the purpose was to try and get an independent group that would take whatever information they could find on this school and the project and try and just put together the facts as they gathered them and put together this report that we did. That's, he felt it would be good to be separate from the building committee, just have an independent look at it as such. So that's how we came about.
Okay. And can you describe who was appointed to the group? Was it only people who were previously in support of the proposed new school?
No, Tom actually had called me in and asked me if I would chair the group. Surprised me as well, as a lot of people, I think, but he had a list of about 24 people that he wanted to invite in, which he did. He sent out an invitation to be part of the group. And we ended up with 15 people on the group. And I can tell you that not everybody on the group was a yes vote for the school. So I think the group worked very well trying to be unbiased and just looking for the facts and trying to put things together in a manner that people could go through it. And we referenced them back to the building committee site, which had all the documents, hundreds and hundreds of pages, but we tried to cull down the information to be somewhat readable and informative.
So how did the group conduct its research, and who did it obtain information from?
Just one.
Yeah, so first I just want to say to the last question quickly. We actually started out by, in the first meetings, being a bit skeptical ourselves of the group. Those of us who were invited to join. We joined. I even questioned, are there people who are against this project in this group? Because I felt it was very important that if it was going to be viewed as a trustworthy source, we were going to be offering something that brought in perspectives from different sides of the issue, and that we weren't just seen as another arm advocating for a project. And so that we talked through the beginning, and we were actively seeking people who were opposing the project and seeking their input. So in terms of how we did our work, we met regularly throughout the course of the fall. It was actually, I think, a really collaborative group, which was great. Everybody was pitching in. We started by, once we formed the group and we kind of asked the town manager to step aside now, and he stepped out, we got together with the public, and we ourselves and the public together generated the questions we still had that were out there, that we had heard from the people we interact with. We asked the public directly. We invited people to come, and we had a lot of people who were either in favor or against the project, who, really just felt like they didn't know all the answers they wanted to have when they voted the first time. So we collected those, we sent out questions to different town officials, Dr. Baeta, the town manager, a few other folks in the town, people from the building committee as well, and then we would get some of the feedback from the experts, town council if needed, and we collected all that, and we'd have them come and present their answers to the group for further questioning. So that's how we did a good portion of it, and then we also held sessions where we had representatives from the Vote Yes group and representatives from the Vote No group come in, so we could have them actually present why they were supporting the project, what were the reasoning, behind it, what was the reasoning behind it, and what was the proposal. And then we also, would ask for what they were, wanting to go into the report. So we did that too. Lots of questions there. And eventually we synthesized it in the form of a Q&A so that we could try to put the report in the perspective of the voters who had these questions, and then try to synthesize the answers.
So how did the individual members participate? Were there opportunities both at the meeting and in between meetings to ask questions to be researched with folks who were on the committee?
Oh, yeah. Everybody was asking questions, both before we would send them out, and then when the experts would come in and talk with us, everybody had a chance to question again. And then there were some sessions that we did where we specifically invited members of the public to also question, and then some where we did just amongst ourselves to try to make sure we could get through and get this report done on time.
So it sounds like it wasn't a divisive, I know that this is kind of a divisive issue in town, but it sounds like your independent working group, there were not a lot of heated discussions, that everybody was truly working towards.
Well, I think both things can be true.
Okay.
There were a lot of heated discussions,
But they were.
and we were working toward.
But they were productive.
Sure.
They were productive discussions. It is, as you say, it's a very emotional subject. So, we didn't come to fisticuffs, but, we had some very healthy discussions on trying to get this report together in a fashion that we felt would be useful to the people who are looking for the information, so.
And I think that's good for people to know that, people aired their emotion through this process and didn't just go along to get along. Yeah.
Well, no, but it was done respectfully too. It wasn't, attack and so forth. It was, to me, very professional. I was very happy to see the diverse group of people that we had, and it was pretty, varied. They really were just looking to try and put something together that they could be proud of.
Sure.
And every member of the committee did sign the report, so,
Good.
it was something that we could be proud of, that everybody could come to a consensus that this was worthwhile putting out with your name on it.
Good.
With a plug that there are copies of the report for anyone who would like to take one with them. We did try to keep it relatively brief, and there's a 2-page executive summary at the front if you want to just look through our main findings.
So what are the details of the proposed program for replacing the existing South School? Can either of you describe the proposed new building and how it fits into the town's education plan?
Sure, I'll give it a try. I'll count on my vice chair to straighten me out if I go astray. But the plan for the school is to build this school would be, it's 3 stories. It's K and 1 on the first floor. I think it's 2 and 3 on the second floor, and 4 and 5 on the third floor. So they isolate the groups by age group. It will, ultimately, it would hold 600 students, which allows them to merge both the South and Wilkinson into one school. And it addresses, it's actually based on the educational plan that Stoughton has, was the basis of the design for the school. They're looking to truly consolidate by putting this school together. It would allow them to then, take care of the Jones and the South as far as getting them offline and taking care of them
New
down the line.
buildings.
Once the new building would be
Sure.
up and ready.
Sure.
And
The big point there, I just want to make clear for those who don't know, the current South School only serves was only supposed to serve a couple hundred students, and it's already over capacity, as are the other schools with the increasing population. So this 600 student school allows for a consolidation of 2 elementaries into one, and that is something that is important as a cost savings for the town, because ultimately now the plan is such that you go from 5 elementary schools down to 4.
So that leads to my next question, which is, what is going to happen to the Wilkins School and the Jones School? Are they going to be offline?
you want to take it? or-
Sure, yeah. So the current plan, as I understand it, is that the Jones School, so if this gets approved, and this will come back to a vote in April of this year, so next month, April 8th. If it gets approved by the voters, then the new school, once it goes under construction and is built and opens its doors, at that time, then the Jones would go offline, the Wilkins would go offline as elementary, and the Wilkins would get converted into a preschool, and the Jones site would be closed down, and the Old South School site would be closed down. So you'd be talking about selling off, and I believe they've already initiated the process, or at least taking the steps so that they could do that. It's kind of a complicated process. But those 2 buildings would be handed back over to the town, and the town would be able to then sell the properties. And then you would have the Wilkins as a pre-K and the administrative home, because that's currently at the Jones. And so the administration moves over to Wilkins along with the preschool opening up there, and then you'd have the 4 remaining, the Hanson, the Daw, the Gibbons, and the New South School, which would be the ones that would serve the elementary students. And importantly, in all of this, you're talking about full redistricting across the town anyway. That's going to happen no matter what. So it is not a situation of vote this down and all the schools and all the children stay where they are. It is a situation where all the students are getting redistricted anyway, and it's a matter of how they draw the lines eventually if we go to these other sites.
Yes, and right now, if you've been through the South School, they have their library in the hallways, the classrooms used to be closets and things. I mean, it's in tough shape. And as just mentioned, they are going to do a townwide redistricting no matter what. If the new school isn't approved, and there's that much of a delay in trying to do any fixing, they feel they're gonna have to shut the South School down regardless. But in the report you'll see, because that was done as of the 9th of December. So when it was done, there was a process in place that would allow the schools to turn the buildings over to the town, et cetera, and the board could vote to do, sell them and so forth. Now, the board has already signed a letter of intent to do just that, to sell the buildings, bring it to town meeting, and see if the town meeting would vote to use the net proceeds to pay down the debt of what you'd have to borrow to build the new school. So they've already made that initial commitment to do that.
That sounds like it would be a
And-
significant amount to,
Well, even being very conservative, I think we were looking at maybe $5 to $10 million between the 2 properties that you'd be able to, reduce the debt of any borrowing.
Yeah.
And as it is now, I believe they've said, the South School or the Jones School it costs them more to run that building than the new high school. So, you know, it'd be a much more efficient building as far as, and we've all seen what's happening with that.
That's
With,
right.
From an energy standpoint.
Yeah,
Yes,
Probably maintenance too.
and maintenance.
and maintenance.
Fewer buildings, 2 very old buildings out of the way,
Right.
1
That-
brand new building.
I just, you know, and the cost to do anything with the existing schools, with the south, and even if they have to stay in the Jones, they'd have to do work there as well. But, you know, they looked at just trying to, what if we refurbished the south school, and they came up with a price tag of $46 million. That would get them back to the 225 students. Because when they do it, they have to go ADA compliant. And it would only put them at the 225 students. And they would have to do a similar project at the Wilkins. And again, now you're talking $92 million. And in the meantime, if you're really refurbishing those, yes, you would find that the other elementary schools would end up having the mobile modulars put in. And even that, matter of fact, there is a presentation by Dr. Bayetta that just went out on YouTube. And it's about an updated plan on doing the modulars. And it's getting more and more costly. They had a rough estimate of what it would cost, and now you're looking at, you know, you do have to get all the utilities there. I think, and they're talking now expanding, by the way, from the 3 schools, that they'd probably have to do them at the Wilkins as well.
So
Because you would-
modulars at 4 schools.
You would, yes, and I know at the Daw and the Gibbons, you're gonna lose your playgrounds, because that's where the classrooms are gonna go. There'd be some offices, the bathrooms, and you'd either have a canopy connecting it to the existing building, and there's been some concern, I guess, raised that if they actually enclosed it, made it part of the building, you have to be very careful, because now you may be triggering ADA again, you know, and which is a major effort. But
There's just a
it's-
couple of points here that I think we should clarify, which is that the total cost of this project, at the time we did this report, was $113 million. And the town would be responsible for $66 million of that, with the MSBA paying, the state basically giving us a grant of $47 million for the remainder. So if this is approved, we get $47 million to help fund the cost of the school, with the town only paying $66 million. So when John is saying, if we don't go this route, and we have to, you know, if people were gonna refurbish those other schools, it would cost $92 million, you can hear that that's a bad deal. And I will say, to be fair, not even you know, neither the vote no group would not say, let's do that. They're all saying, you know, that's not an option. And they're also saying they don't think modulars are a good option. The thought is, you know, could we build a smaller school now for a smaller amount? We were not able, we did not see any plans put before us to show that that's possible. And right now, the only plan of the 10, 12 that were put forward by the building committee to the MSBA for consideration, this is the one, the design that's already fully designed, this is the one that they agreed to support for our town. This is a process that's hard, it's a long, hard process to get approved for this. This is our one and only, well, we had one shot, it did get voted down last time by our townspeople. This coming up again is the chance to consider it again. So this is, you know, this is the dollars and cents that we're dealing with here. 66 million, as far as we know, from the town, and 47 million from the state to get the new 600-student consolidated school.
A true consolidation.
A true
Because it
consolidation.
would eliminate two schools and repurpose another one, the Wilkins, which, by the way, for the preschool, they already have a waiting list. I think it's a 90 student waiting list for preschool. I think they have 75 in there now. And
My
they're
grandchildren
looking,
are on that list.
well, they're also looking at within the next couple of years, you could see mandated preschool. So just trying to stay ahead of the
So the preschool program that would be proposed for the Wilkins School would be a town-wide, it's not just precinct area.
Oh, no, that would be for the town,
Yeah.
yes. It would be to serve that need.
So my next question is about how to respond to voters who are concerned with the increasing taxes as a result of this new building project. And you partially answered it with, you see a lot of signs around town that say, pay less, vote yes,
Mhm.
and no new taxes, vote no.
Mhm.
I mean, where's the truth in that? Are they both true? Is one more true than the other?
Depends on how you look at it, I guess. I mean,
So are the taxes
If-
gonna go up either way?
well, that's a fine line you have to watch there.
Okay.
If you build a new school and you do the debt exclusion, there's no doubt you're gonna have an assessment. Which, by the way, a very big point, they did have their finance people, Hillcrest. I always go to call it Hilltop because I think of the steakhouse that's no longer there. But Hillcrest reran the numbers, the town asked them to go through it again. And there's a little bit of a favorable interest rate at the moment when they did it. And it dropped the cost from 61 cents per thousand evaluation to 55 cents per thousand evaluation. That's about a 10% drop. And I believe they come out with it would be like a $3.8 million payment from the town instead of $4 per year. $200,000 a year for 30 years is $6 million that they would be able to cut back just when they reran the numbers a few months ago. And that would be, definitely, that would be an exclusion that would show up on your tax bill like the high school did.
And
It-
to make that clear to people who aren't following the math, what that equates to is the 55 cents per thousand is about $275 a year if your house is about a $500,000
Yeah.
house. And if it's a
And if,
$300,000.
yeah, if it was 300,000, you'd be $165,
A
you know,
year.
for
So-
the year. If it was 400, it would be 220, you know? Yeah,
Now,
500 would
so
be
those numbers you're
275.
talking about are for the
Yearly.
new building.
That would be for the
That's
new
for the
building.
What would happen
That
to
would-
people's taxes if we vote no?
Well, it's not so matter of what happens to your taxes. You are limited, you know, with your 2.5% plus your new growth and so forth, which you are limited no matter what. The exclusion would be to raise the money to pay that note and build that school. If you weren't gonna do that, and you had to build a school, talking to the town officials, they don't believe they can have $3.8 million taken out of your budget every year without cutting services. That's what we've been told. So you can talk to your town officials, they say if you need $3.8 million, you're gonna be cutting services to get it. So I guess that, you know, you want to keep your taxes, look, everything goes up. Salaries are going up, you know, costs are going up. There will come a point, you know, you say, well, I mean, we can only raise so much money in taxes. But I wouldn't say, I know they push it for no taxes, but based on what we hear from the officials, they cannot pay for the school within the budget without cutting services.
But they can also spend $92 million on expanding 3 other schools.
No, you
Fixing
can't.
The
That's-
other 2, I
Right.
think that's
You-
what you're not addressing here is that.
No, I mean, the thing
The
is,
Plan B has specific costs too, but you haven't gone far enough through the process to know what the tax implications are of.
well, no, you can, because if you built a new school, you will get support from the state, and you know what it's gonna cost you on the debt exclusion. If you vote the school down, your problem hasn't been solved, and you need to do something. And if you have to fix the schools, it's gonna cost money. Where's the money coming from? You're not getting it from anywhere else. It's gonna come out of your tax base. If you have to take that money out of your tax base, well, where's that money coming from? And that's the point they're saying is, well, now, if you're not gonna raise your taxes, you would still have to pay for all the things that you have to do.
And we
And,
easily have a more than $66 million
And-
problem on our hands.
and if they
which is
just
a
look at the
concern.
2 schools, if they were going to do those 2 schools, you're at 92 million. Plus the ancillary costs of having to, if you're gonna do that school, you gotta put the kids somewhere to begin with, which means you would be bringing in the modular classrooms to set them up. 10 years best is what they're looking at. They're only, not looking at permanent, they'd be looking for a 10-year item, if you will, to put up. And that's a cost in itself. So, I mean, my conclusion personally, after gathering all the facts, looking at it, to me, building the new school was the cheapest way to go out of all the options we had.
So it also sounds like Dr. Baeta put out a video on this particular topic on what the costs are gonna be for the modulars, and maybe we should have people watch that video.
I only heard about it today. I watched it shortly before I came here. It was only, I think, 12 minutes and 49 seconds, but don't hold me to that. But it was very informative, because that was the first time I heard where, yeah, there'd be a good possibility we would need to do them at the Wilkins as well. And I know there's, you know, I know it's tough to say, we're gonna lose a neighborhood school. Well, you're gonna lose one no matter what. If you don't build at the south, you're gonna lose that one. If you're gonna repurpose the Wilkinson, yeah, that won't be a neighborhood school. But right now, the MSBA is, if you're going through them, this is what they're looking to do. A bigger school, which is cheaper than trying to build 2 small ones. And they're not approving the small ones. They haven't approved a, what do they call them? The model
Model
schools.
schools.
They haven't approved one since 2012.
Wow.
Because they know, they've said, on this, they'll tell you, they're looking at changing their program because it's come to they've come to the conclusion, you really have to build towards an educational plan. And that's what they've done for this new school, looking at the town of Stoughton's educational plan. So they're not looking to build 2 small ones. It's more costly to do that than to build the one bigger one. And that's the way they've been headed, I guess, for the last few years.
Thank you for that. So I have a couple of questions from the audience here on the little cards, and one of it goes to the point of,
Paul, it's hard to hear you.
Oh.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry, I thought I was talking loud enough.
Okay.
So one of the issues is the Wilkins School and it no longer being a neighborhood school. So one of the questions from the audience is what will be happening to the Wilkins School, and how do you respond to Precinct 8 families who are losing their neighborhood school?
I'll quickly say, I think this is a really sad loss of taking an elementary school away, an award-winning elementary school. So that is hard. I can understand why that would be a tough decision for the people of Precinct 8, and why they wouldn't want that to happen. And I think the reality is that this is a townwide issue and a townwide problem, and we have a possible solution on the table that is the best viable situation that we're in. At least the Wilkins is in good shape and can be, repurposed for preschool, so there'll still be school activities and things happening there. The sort of townwide approach is, it's going to feel different, but the school would still be in operation. And the point too there is that the Wilkins, expanding the Wilkins was one of the options on the table. That's not what the MSBA selected. So unfortunately, that's not an option. And at least with the preschool, you're not actually having to design for elementary, which triggers the ADA compliance and the major overhaul, which would actually shrink the footprint more. So when we looked into it, it's the best school in the best shape for a preschool. And then with all of the other students being redistricted all around anyway, I think everybody's going to be feeling that change. It's not going to only impact Wilkins. That's the best I can say. I'm not going to try to say it's not a loss for people who really love their neighborhood school. I've been in that position before in the past too, and I know what that looks like.
Yeah, it's hard. And Matter of fact, Dr. Byetta addressed that in his video with the updates on the modular, as far as the effect of if you built the south, and he believes it would be a less of an impact as far as trying to do the redistricting, or less disruptive. It's going to be disruptive no matter what. And there are going to be kids that are being moved from all the schools, the way they go through it. And even that's a complicated process, because you have to make sure that when you're doing the redistricting, you're not creating another problem. You can't say, oh, we'll just do this and find out that you put a majority of minorities in one school, So there are many factors that come in that you have to look at to make sure that you don't bring yourself more trouble by saying, oh, we can just do this. It is a complicated process.
So here's another question from the audience. If the vote is no, what will happen to the South School students, staff, and faculty, as well as the building?
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
the last I was told is if the vote goes no, they will have to start looking at bringing the modulars in and being able to redistribute the South School kids, which will also affect all the other schools, because you can't just say, we'll take that school and put it here. They're gonna take so many here, and the closest school is the Gibbons. If people go there, people from the Gibbons are gonna be moving, and that's part of the redistricting process that would come into play. And there's gonna be a cost to that, because you're gonna have a place to put them. And there's no place to really put them right now. The schools are already at capacity or overcrowded, and they would need to bring the other classrooms in. Now, obviously, if they're putting classrooms somewhere else, they would still need to staff them and so forth, so. And there are issues even with doing that. If you're putting that many more students in, how does the existing cafeteria work? Is they gonna have to just expand the lunch hour to be, maybe starting at 10 and going until, 2?
I've heard even earlier.
Yeah, I
Lunch
mean,
at 9 a.m.
but I mean, that's some of the logistics that come into play as far as
So the
moving
South
them.
School will close like in September?
Well, I wouldn't say September, but I don't think you'll see it lasting too long. They thought they could nurse it through when it came up last June. Their intent was to nurse it through as best they could until they got a new school built. They're still taking that approach. We even say in the report that they'll do the best they can to keep it going. There's no guarantee that something unforeseen came up that you might have to close it early.
Yeah, I think the short version on that is that if they know the new South will come online, then there's a reason to try to nurse it along a little longer. If it's not gonna happen, then this has already been going on for so long that they need to move more quickly to shut it down and get the kids redistributed to better sites.
So I have another question for you here from the audience, and it says, given the potential tariffs on Canada and Mexico, especially since Canada provides a significant portion of mass building supplies, will there be a large increase in the cost? And if yes, what might that look like?
I couldn't answer that.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that's obviously developed since December 9th when we submitted the report, and it's actually one of the things that scares me too, because I think, we know that the tariffs would raise costs. We don't know how much exactly, and how precipitously, but we do know that building costs have been skyrocketing. The Globe just did an article on this, so this is not again, I try to say, this is not a Stoughton problem. This is a problem everywhere, and the amount we're talking about for our school is relatively small. I mean, if you look across the state, so many other schools, they're talking 300, 400, 500, I've even seen 700 plus million, it's a larger school, of course, but that's the cost they're looking at, and it has ballooned. So that's another reason why the costs aren't gonna go down if we don't do it now just because there's tariffs.
Mhm.
The costs are gonna continue to go up if we keep not doing this. So we have to just be reasonable about what is the most economical solution to the problem we have in front of us right now. And even with tariffs, we're still gonna be better off doing something sooner than later. Because all we're gonna do is spend the same amount of money on a short-term solution. And then imagine how much these costs are gonna be 10 more years down the road. So, I mean, that's the problem we face. It's a tough problem. This is not like something that we can solve easily here. We're all looking for the best solution we can find.
Thank you. So here's our last question of the evening. And it says, again, an audience question, how far along in the design process is the new school? Is the design pretty much set in stone at this point, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly
Yeah,
fully
for
developed.
the, you know, from a high level, yes, it's pretty much set. Not everything is set in concrete. If it's voted to go, that's when they'll start fine tuning things. But, I mean, the basic premise of what they want to build and what it would be like has all been vetted through now. I mean, that's what we spent $1 million on already, so.
Right, it's a multi-year process too, so if not this school, then we're gonna end up starting over and taking 5 more years to design another school and pay more millions to do that too. So that's
I
something to
mean,
keep in mind.
You're already looking at a year delay now from when it was first proposed, so. Although with that delay, before this other issue came up with tariffs or what have you, the estimate, from what we're told, from the owner's engineer and the project people, they felt that the increases would be able to be absorbed in the price they had through 26, I believe, from the estimates they had. They were kind of assuring us that that would still hold through. So, new developments always bring new challenges, but
Yep.
but that's gonna happen whether you're building new, whether you're rebuilding or you're refurbishing, all the costs are still gonna be there. And you'll be affected one way or the other, no matter which way you go. You're gonna have it's gonna have an effect on what it's costing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it okay if we take a
Yeah,
couple more questions
from the audience?
live?
Yeah, I'm just curious, what attribute of this project or process that you've been on with the committee has been most surprising to you?
Oh, in terms of learnings?
Yeah,
Yeah. Boy, I had a lot of learnings on this. So most surprising, I don't tend to do great with superlatives, but I would say the whole aspect, I thought going into it that the yes/no question was really just about taxes. I didn't realize the multitude of reasons people were voting no. So I was surprised to learn that people I would have thought were supportive of schools, you know, broadly were voting no. And it was in large part because of the local impacts and the elementary nature. And I came to town at the time when there was the campaign to build the high school. And it seemed like, oh, that just went through. So I thought, this is a pro-school town, and so you're pro-school or you're no tax. And it turned out to be a lot more complex than that. That was a really interesting learning for me.
Yeah, I would say, in my opinion, is a lot of people that saw this as a South School issue
Another one.
did not realize that this was going to impact all the elementary school kids. Whereas the high school, well, it's the high school, we only have the one high school, that's for
Right.
all the kids in the town, which is why it passed, you know, with 72% favor. I think in this one, I just don't think the message was out there, which is one of the reasons the town manager put this group together. I just don't think people understood what was going to happen no matter. That it wasn't just South School. And it wasn't just, well, we're gonna take the Wilkins and do this. And that only came through, by the way, during this process. That it was agreed they would consolidate and actually get rid of the Jones as well as the South if this passed, and they would move the admin back, you know, over to the Wilkins. That actually came about during this process, that agreement was made. So that was a positive in my mind. But I think that was a big part of it. I think people looked at it and said, well, I'm over in the west, I'm over here, I'm in the north, or I'm over in the, and it just didn't seem to be that it was gonna affect you. But it was going to regardless, so.
That's true. They
That was
started out-
something that, yeah, I mean, it was something that, talking to people, I said, geez, I just don't think people understood enough of what was going on and what was gonna take place if they built this school.
Do you think the word has gotten out adequately this time around?
I think it's getting out better.
I would say that this is one of the reasons we
I-
have this
well,
forum,
it's-
was so that we
it's one of the
could
reasons
get the
we did
information
this.
out there to people.
Yeah.
And Jess and I had done a show with Dave Walsh on the, around town, discussing this project. And I think the building committee is also working on, you know, getting things out there. I know the two PACs are hard at work, trying to get their points out. But time will tell. We'll see. I mean, you know, voting is gonna start March 31st. They voted to allow the early voting as of March 31st in the first 4 days in April. So it's coming fast.
Yeah.
So
How long have they been talking about rebuilding the South School? Because even when I went to the South School, they were
When-
talking about rebuilding it.
when I was on the Board of Selectmen in 2014 and they chose to build the high school, the South School had been deemed in worse shape than the high school, but the high school was chosen as the bigger need. That was 11 years ago. The South School has been needing to be replaced probably for at least 15 to 20 years. But I do recall that in 2014, when they chose to do the high school, the evaluation, physically, the South School was in worse shape.
When did you graduate out of the South?
2011.
Okay.
That's 40 years after I
We've got
graduated from high
another
school.
question over here.
Yes.
And what do you say, you talked about people who said, oh, I'm not in the South School District, it doesn't matter. But what do you say to the people who don't have kids in elementary school? Why should they care about this?
Yeah, we actually did try to address this question in the report as well. There's definitely a strong correlation between good school systems, thriving school systems with newer buildings, if you look at the high school, for instance, and you know, how that attracts families to towns, and how it supports economies and the growth of the town and an overall investment. So I would be somebody who'd be minded to make a kind of a common goods argument that this is an obligation of any community to support education. I think we see what happens when we underinvest in education in the country. And so but that I know might not be compelling to somebody who's only concerned about the dollars and cents of it all. And I think even if you're just looking at it economically, it tends to increase the attraction of the town. It gets more businesses in, more families, and so on. And then the town grows and can continue to thrive. Imagine a town where you have our new high school, this new school, the other schools are in good shape. We've been told, you know, they're going to last, you know, there'll be no more new elementary construction for 50 years. And then you do have the middle school to deal with. That would come online after we've paid for the high school. But if you had that, what our town looks like and who it attracts compared to we don't do this, we have modulars everywhere, and we are struggling to pay the bills. And who's going to want to move here? So I do think that's a realistic thing for people to think through.
And I also look at it that I didn't pay for the schools my kids went through, but somebody did. And it was the people before us. I mean, you know, my kids are 45 and 42, so they've been out of elementary school for a few years now, but But I think it's just an obligation of the town, as things are needed, you do what prior generations have had to do. You build the infrastructure it takes to keep your town moving forward.
And on that note, I think that's a great note for us to end on here tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Susan,
Thank you
for
for
Thank
hosting.
you.
hosting it, and thank you all for coming and giving some of your time.
Yeah.
And hopefully, within the next month, this will be behind us.
Here, here.
And thank you to Stoughton Media Access for recording this for us, for your viewing pleasure.